Good morning, everybody. I can see that participants are still coming in, and I will wait for half a minute more. Yes, I think we are ready to go. So welcome everybody to today's event, the Fair Impact National Roadshow Austria. This event has been organized by TU Graz, and the program was developed collaboratively with other Austrian institutions. My name is Barbara Sanchez from TU Wien, and I will be moderating. Before we proceed with Rita Meneses, who will provide further context for the event, I would like to say a few words about the agenda. In the first half, we will showcase local work, followed by a short break. In the second half, we will present European developments with highlights from European projects. Additionally, there will be an open discussion at the end. Please feel free, however, to post your questions in the chat anytime. Our teams will do their best to respond promptly. Also, the slides presented in the webinar, as well as the webinar recording, will later be available on the event page. And now I would like to introduce our first speaker, who will also provide a wider context, Rita Meneses. The floor is yours.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Fair Impact National Roadshow. We are very happy to have you here with us for another episode of the Roadshow. So before we proceed, I'm going to give an overview of what is the Fair Impact Project, what is its goal, and what we are doing. So the Fair Impact Project started in June 22. We are over 28 partners from around Europe, and we are here to support the adoption of fair data practices across Europe, namely the adoption of the FAIR solution across European Open Science Cloud, also known as EOSC. So we have a body of EOSC FAIR champions who are supporting us in the project, giving us advice on how to proceed with our work. We have several open calls where we support data managers and different profiles of open science in embracing fair data practices. And we have many other activities we are doing, namely a fair data catalog for people to consult and to find out solutions that will help them to make their data more fair. So the consortium is quite big. As I mentioned, we are almost 30 partners. The project is coordinated by the DANS, based in the Netherlands. And then we have partners across Europe, from universities, research center, private companies, data centers, and so on. So the overall objective of Fair Impact is basically to realize a fair European Open Science Cloud. And we do this by supporting the implementation of fair practices across different science communities. So we don't focus on marine science or biology science. We focus across different scientific communities. Okay, so it's a very horizontal project in this sense. And for this, we engage with the different stakeholders from different phases of the overall research lifecycle. We are also identifying fair solutions that already exist, and we promote to these audiences. And as mentioned before, and I'll provide further details at the end of this webinar, we also have some open calls where we support people in adopting fair practices. So the Fair Impact Project is organized by 7 work packages, which focus, let's say, on different aspects of open science, namely on persistent identifiers, interoperability, metadata, and ontologies. So you also have a work package focused on metrics and certification, and 2 which are less technical but more related to support the adoption of these practices. One is work package 2, focused on engagement, adoption, and implementation, and the other one is focused on dissemination, communication, and exploitation. So, as said, we want to contribute to the EOSC, to the European Open Science Cloud, and how do we do that? So we have 4 main areas from EOSC which we focus on, which are the identifiers, the metadata and ontologies, metrics, and also interoperability. As you may realize, the previous work packages from Fair Impact are exactly this. So we have a specific team within Fair Impact who is focusing on each one of these topics, but they also focus on other parts. For example, we have been joining relevant events from EOSC. We are also contributing to the EOSC macro roadmap, to the EOSC task force papers, and every year we have been publishing a policy brief. So these are the main areas where we are working on. And for each one of these areas, we are preparing use cases. So at the moment, we have a couple of use cases published on the website, but our aim is to publish much more during the next month. So keep posted in our website. For example, this is an example of a use case that we have from different sciences, and they are listed on the website. One very important thing I would like to highlight from Fair Impact, which is available on the website as well, is the Fair Implementation Catalog, which is, let's say, an online library where stakeholders can find resources, tools, and other solutions to help them to make their data more fair. But also, if you also have a resource, for example, which is not listed in this catalog, feel free to contact us so we can add your solution in the catalog as well. So this is something we are very proud to have available, and we want to make this catalog have more entries. So if you have some, please contact. If you don't have some, but you are interested to look for solutions, just visit the catalog. And then one thing that...
2 more minutes.
Thank you. Just one thing I would like to highlight and to close is that within Fair Impact, we organize every year the synchronization force workshops. They are all online. We are working out towards the 2024 edition. But in the meantime, we have the report of the previous year edition with recommendations of fair data practices and open science. So we invite you all to read and keep posted for the edition we organized this year. So thank you very much. I think I provided a quick overview of what Fair Impact is about. And now it's time to give the floor to our guests today. Barbara, up to you.
Thank you for providing this insight into the Fair Impact project. I would now like to proceed to our next speaker, Ilire Hassani Mavriki. She is head of the research data management team at TU Graz. She has a PhD in computer science and has been coordinator of digitization projects co-founded by the Austrian Ministry. Ilire is currently also chair of the General Assembly of the EOSC Support Office Austria. Ilire, please give us some insight what is going on in Austria.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you for this introduction. And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fair Impact Roadshow in Austria. We are very happy that we have this possibility to inform you about latest development in Austria in regard to research data management and open science. And I will start with some motivation on why we need all these activities and implementation mechanisms that are taking place not only on the institutional, national, but also international level. All these new innovative technologies, of course, enable us to perform interdisciplinary research, which is also related with some challenges, because researchers will need to be used to new circumstances. If they were used to work more as independent scientists, now they need to collaborate with others. They need to move towards research outcome sharing, making sure that this research output is also reusable and reproducible. But on the other side, interdisciplinary research really enables us to address big societal challenges. In parallel, also the funding organizations are putting in place strategies and measures to make sure that the research results that they are funding are also discoverable and accessible. The main aim is to make sure that their potential is exploited. What are we doing in Austria in this regard? So the main implementation strategy in Austria is around the interplay between three main actors or the stakeholders, which is the government, and in our case is the Federal Ministry of Education, Science and Research, then the research performing organizations and the community, the research community, but also research support community. On the policy level, we have the Austrian policy on open science and EOSC that was ratified by 3 ministries. On the other side, research performing organizations, they have their institutional fair data or research data management policies. When it comes to the implementation, again, our government, more specifically the Ministry for Education, Science and Research, has put in place some seed funding to make sure that the policy on the national level is also implemented, with the possibility to apply in open calls. The community as a whole has joined forces around the so-called cluster research data, where we implement projects that make sure to implement research data management and open science in Austria. On the other hand, we also have the EOSC mandated organization with its operational node, which is the EOSC Support Office Austria. On the side of the research performing organizations or our universities, we have an interdisciplinary stakeholder platform, which is known as Open Science Austria, where the members of the Austrian University Conference or the Rectorates Conference are gathered. So this is the big picture of the open science and research data management landscape in Austria. And today we will focus on the community part. So we will present our activities that we have right now. So in terms of cluster research data, this was established as an umbrella organization with an initiative from our ministry, and we have all 22 universities in Austria that are involved in this organization, and the lead in the implementation of these projects has TU Vienna, Uni Vienna, and we as TU Graz. Our aim is to ensure that we have continuous exchange and active cooperation between the universities, that we identify synergies, and we make sure that we work with optimized resources in order to achieve these very challenging goals. I will focus today on 2 projects that implement the research data management and open science in Austria. We had between 2020 and 2022 a Fair Data Austria project, where we have achieved to establish the basic RDM infrastructure to implement the FAIR principles. Then another very important part of the project was also to make sure that the professionalization of the data stewards is established in Austria. So we have a national initiative in which we have defined for the Austrian context data steward models and also implementation mechanisms. Since the project started, we have data steward roles established in many universities in Austria. Then we have a follow-up project of the Fair Data Austria, which is called Shared RDM Services and Infrastructures. So we are entering the 2nd year of implementing this project. We also managed to have more project partners in the consortium. We also have associated partners, and Fair Impact Project is also one of the supportive and associated partners in this case. Our project mission is to make sure to create a framework condition in order to be able to offer tools and infrastructures as shared services for Austrian universities. So in the Fair Data Austria project, we have managed to establish a very basic infrastructure. Now we are working on bringing these tools and services on a more mature level, and also finding conditions how to move towards more centralized and shared services in Austria. So we implement our project goals having in mind three different perspectives. On the technical part, we want to identify across-university models for shared RDM services and infrastructures based on the following tools: on machine actionable data management plans, and you will hear a bit later a talk from Tomasz Miksza in this regard. We also have analysis platforms with an example of Cybers Austria that we are developing within the consortium. We have the open source solution for electronic lab notebooks, which is eLab FTW. And in regard to repository systems, we have two different solutions for research output repositories in VinURDM and Fedra. And we also have developed a solution for repositories for databases, which is known as DBRepo. We work also on the human factors. So we want to make sure that we have an institutional RDM training established, that we work on data steward skills transfer, and also on the transfer of exchange of experiences. And we are very much focused on building networks and collaborations. All this to make sure that we strengthen RDM practices and support across institutions. We also try to be aligned with other initiatives. On the national level, we have a related project which is called ARISNet, and there our aim is to identify and also implement joint use cases. Then we are involved in different European and international initiatives such as EOSC and also RDA, where our project consortium members also contribute in different task forces, working groups, but also in projects. How do we tackle all these goals, and what is our main approach? So we have been working with our partners in the consortium to identify models, the so-called business or operating models, by considering all the requirements and resources that are needed for them in order to roll out tools and services for research data management. So we first analyzed their initial position and situation. So we did a needs assessment. Then we have defined a preliminary model based on the models that we identified. And we also are working on adjusting the processes and monitoring the progress of their implementation. Just to illustrate the point, so far we have identified 4 different possible models that could be applied in Austrian context when it comes to helping different Austrian institutions in rolling out RDM tools and services. So some of institutions, they have resources to implement all in-house. What does it mean? So to have the deployment, the maintenance, and the support activities all within the institution. This is the model 1, for example. There is no strict line division between a model 2 and model 3. where you can have, for example, the deployment outsourced, or and the maintenance in-house, or the other way around. You can only have the in-house support, so you have staff members that could support researchers, but you want to outsource the deployment and the maintenance. And the model 4 is where institution, and this is typically for a smaller research performing organizations where they do not have resources to implement anything in-house, and they prefer to outsource all three main activities when it comes to rolling out RDM tools and services. We have also identified some use cases, and we are working with the project partners that are also shown here as an example. Since the project is a 3-year project, we have identified 3 main phases in the project, and depending on the commitment and on the urgency of their needs, we are working very closely with these project members to implement the identified use cases. Another very important aspect in the project is community building and networking. So we have technical communities established within the project consortium, because mainly we are further developing open source solutions, and in open source projects, community is very, very important. So we have regular core team meetings. We have established means for knowledge transfer and for support for national institutions, but we also work with international open source communities. And this is the case with all our existing tools and services. We also have a national RDM exchange where we meet on regular basis, and we present different topics. The aim is to have community engagement and also to increase the awareness for RDM tools. This forum is open also for external persons. We have established a webinar series with the name Research Data Management in Austria, and all the recordings are also made available in our YouTube channel.
So 2 more minutes.
Thank you. To summarize my presentation, I would just like to highlight some challenges that, of course, we didn't tackle them all yet, and some success factors based on our experience in our projects within the cluster research data, and more specifically based on our experience in FAIR Data Austria and shared RDM infrastructures and services. So the main challenge is to make sure that what we implement as a community, it really serves the needs of the researchers. So the question is, what do they need? And how we make sure that we offer them the best conditions for collaborative and interdisciplinary research. The challenge still remains to make sure that the research data management is an integrative part of research processes, that with our tools and services, we tackle all the challenges that are related with the research data lifecycle. And based on our experience, we have managed to at least have a good basis established when it comes to the infrastructure, tools and services. And here I would like to share with you some of the key elements that also contributed to the success of our projects. So we have dedicated teams at our institutions, and these are very often interdisciplinary teams that are comprised from software developers, from data stewards, project managers. And we also made sure that we involve users in a very early phases of the tool implementation. So we have introduced a friendly user phase in the rollout of our tools, and we made sure that researchers are part of our co-creation processes. And we really focused on sustainable collaboration. So the funding from government, the funding from universities, of course, is not unlimited. And we as community, we want to make sure that we help each other, that we have a sustainable network, and that we make sure that the FAIR principles and also open science becomes a reality. The main message is that we have to keep in mind the benefits for research in our endeavor, and maybe try to reduce the complexity that all these new technologies bring for researchers, and try to increase the accessibility of tools and applications. Thank you very much for your attention. With that, I will unshare my slides and give the word to Barbara.
Thank you very much, Ilire. A lot going on in Austria, a lot of collaboration. And I think we stick to this path also with our next speaker, Teresa Kalova. Teresa is Data Stewardship Coordinator at the University of Vienna and Academic Coordinator of the certificate course Data Steward. Teresa currently holds the position of Chair of the Management Board of the EOSC Support Office Austria, and I think you will tell us more about this initiative now. Teresa, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Barbara. Okay, there we go. So as Barbara mentioned, I'm very excited to talk to you all today a little bit more about the EOSC Support Office Austria and what we do. Both Barbara and Ilire mentioned this initiative already. So let me just dive straight in. So who are we as the EOSC Support Office Austria, or EOSC-SOA for short, because it just rolls off the tongue. So this is the operational body of the Austrian EOSC mandated organization, which is the legal entity which represents Austria within the EOSC Association, and that is the ACONET Association. And we bring together a community of both research performing in organizations from Austria, but also individuals who are interested in the development of the European Open Science Cloud and open science more broadly. So you can see all our current partners on the right-hand side. And these are both the research institutions that are formal members or observers within the EOSC Association, or they are interested in those developments and want to be part of those discussions, and that's why they joined the our initiative on the national level. And as to the people who are involved in this initiative, we have both researchers and research support staff, data scientists, IT support. We also have colleagues who work at museums, especially the Natural History Museum in Vienna. And we have a close link to the Federal Ministry of Education, Science and Research, which also in part funds our initiative. But we are very much open to anybody who's actually interested in these developments, what's going on with the European Open Science Cloud, with the EOSC and open science more broadly. So let's add some faces to this very abstract concept. You've already heard that Barbara and Ilire are our chairs of the General Assembly of this initiative. We have a management board that comprises of 4 research institutions that were elected for this body. Currently, the chair is at the University of Vienna, and we have our backbone, the people you will be in touch with if you reach out to us, and the people who reach out to you through our newsletter and our website, and that's our secretariat. Many of them are here with us today as well. So what do we do as the EOSC Support Office Austria? We very much strive for a coordinated development of the Austrian open science policy and the realization of the goals of the EOSC. So we try to bring together the Austrian community and try to communicate our needs and what's going on, and also communicate the successes, our success stories, our best practices to the EOSC Association and generally to the European research community. And we try to create this link that goes in both directions. So we very much try to bring all these very quick, rash developments on the European level to the Austrian research institutions and to break them down and make them more easily understandable and applicable to the research institutions in Austria. So our goal is very much to establish an EOSC-SOA as a hub for information about the EOSC and open science more broadly in Austria. We do this by with various communication measures. Some of you may have already signed up for our regular newsletter. We also have mailing lists that can be used by the community. And we have an up-to-date events and calls for funding page, which I would really encourage you to check out because there's a lot of interesting things going on right now. And we also try to bring together all various resources that can be helpful about the EOSC and about open science developments. And an example that I wanted to touch upon is the Austria country profile, which is an initiative that's led by Barbara and with a group of colleagues from Austrian research institutions who get together quarterly to bring out this overview of what's going on in terms of open science at Austrian institutions. And this is quite a distinct success that we have to show from our initiative as opposed to many of the other countries. We really actually currently have an idea about what's going on in terms of open science in Austria. So what we also do is we try to foster this community idea within Austria, and we try to organize community events. We have several new ones in the pipeline that I wanted to mention. Especially, we are planning a meeting of all the members of the EOSC task forces, both the former ones and the ones that are starting out right now. And we want to make this an open exchange where we can share ideas and find synergies between the various topics of the EOSC task forces. And as to Austrian representation within the EOSC task forces, we have been very successful over the past years. We had members in 12 of the 13 EOSC task forces, which I think is a huge success. So we really want to support also this adaptation of all the recommendations that have been published recently from the EOSC task forces to the Austrian research context. We also have several events that take place regularly, especially the EOSC Cafe, which is hosted by Stefan Hanslik from the Ministry of Education, Science and Research. And we also have an annual General Assembly, and you will be receiving an official invitation, but I'm just throwing out a save the date right now. It will be taking place on December 17th, right before Christmas, the beautiful historical campus of the University of Vienna. So if I've been able to pique your interest a little and you're not already involved in the initiative, I have some suggestions on how you could possibly get involved, either as an individual. So you can get involved in one of our working groups. You could obviously attend one of our events like the General Assembly, but you could also share your activities with us so that we can promote them with the community. And these could be events that you organize or calls for funding that you're aware of. You can, of course, also contribute to our newsletter. And if you haven't signed up for that yet, I would really encourage you to do so right now. And if you want to find some other ways of getting involved within the EOSC Support Office Austria, you can check out our website, which is quite extensive information on the subject, but you can always also just reach out to us through our email. And if you're considering getting involved as an institution, there's a way to become a member as an official partner. And if your institution is already a member or an observer within the EOSC Association, that's one way to do it, but you can also become a partner of the EOSC Support Office Austria without this formal membership in the EOSC Association. If you just want to be part of this discussion and see what's going on and get more involved in this community and get to know people and just see what's going on, you can always reach out to us, and there are ways for you to become a partner that way as well. And with that, I will thank you for listening and be happy to answer questions if there are any, either now or of course later via email. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, for this nice and well-structured presentation, which showed how Austria is organized around the wider EOSC initiative. I would like to remind you, you can post questions in the chat, and we will have a short Q&A after the next presentation. So the next presentation will give a closer look at tools and services, so concrete RDM and open science tools. Some of them were mentioned already by Ilire. So Tomasz Mixer, our next speaker, holds a PhD in computer science and is senior scientist at TU Wien. His special research interests lie in FAIR aspects and machine actionable data management plan tools. He is furthermore technical coordinator in the EOSC project OS Trails. Tomasz, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome everyone to the presentation. Within the next 15 minutes, I will try to take this title apart. So I will first start with the explanation of data management plans and machine actionable data management plans, short MADMPs. And then I will let you know what we did in Austria and how it contributes to the bigger picture of what happens internationally to what we do at RDA, but also how it aligns with another EOSC project, OS Trails. So you will also get to hear about OS Trails in this presentation. So first of all, data management plans are documents that researchers write during their research to document what they do, what they will do in their project. So here in the slide, you can see an example of a template with questions from an Austrian funder, or you can see a DCC checklist, which was the old checklist used by many funders across Europe to derive their own questions for the DMPs and for the requirements regarding data management plans. And what we did at RDA, at Research Data Alliance, we said, okay, the traditional DMPs model questionnaires, so they consist of questions and answers you give in the natural language, and they are very often vague and inconsistent. You can see in this example that we are referring to Moritz, who is responsible for the DMP, and he's from our university, and you don't know exactly who Moritz is and which university. And then you have an example of a machine actionable DMP in the bottom that models the information. So it uses the identifiers, it uses the email address, it uses a controlled vocabulary to say, for example, that Moritz is a data manager. As you can see, this very nicely aligns with the principles behind the FAIR principles. So making things machine actionable and using these standardized terms using identifiers. And there was a big discussion within the Research Data Alliance. There was a working group to define this common standard for expressing information from data management plans in this machine actionable way. We looked for a common denominator. So the goal was not to model all possible templates and questionnaires, but rather to see what is the common part between the templates we use in Europe, in the US, or in other parts of the world, and what is the information that we can put into this representation that can be used by other systems. Because what we wanted to achieve with data management plans is that they become useful not only for, let's say, funders to see whether the researchers comply to some requirements, but also that we can maximize their use of information, and that, for example, information on licenses or on costs can be provided by someone else than a researcher and also reused by someone else who needs that information. But this is what happened around 2019 when we published the recommendation. And then we had some developments in Austria. And what we did within the FAIR Data Austria project, and now we continue within the shared RDM project, was to develop a tool for data management planning. Because at that time, most of the tools that were out there in the market, they focused on these questionnaires and generating PDFs. And we wanted a tool that is built with machine actionability in mind. And that's why this Austrian project and collaboration with universities in Austria was a perfect vehicle to get such a tool. Thanks to this collaboration, we created a tool called DAMAP. It is based on this RDA recommendation. And we have two early adopters. So we have TUWin and TU Graz who are running the instances in their environments, and the researchers are actively using the DAMAP instances. And we are also now in the process of rolling out DAMAP at other universities in Austria. We are also getting requests from other universities. And as Ilya mentioned, there are these different ways of hosting a service. So some of the universities want to run DAMAP on premises. Some of them are interested in DAMAP as a service where it basically is hosted for them, but they still have the full right of customizing how it looks like. Some examples of the automation we do with DAMAP, you can see here 3 screenshots. Starting from the left-hand side, you can see that DAMAP integrates well with the university systems like CRIS systems. So here, when choosing people for a project that participate in the project, you get this information from the university system. So you reuse the information. In the middle, you can see a list of projects that are relevant for you. So when you're starting a DMP, you can choose from a list of projects that are registered at your university, and then you say, I want to create a DMP for this one. And bottom right, you can see that DAMAP recommends a specific repository for you. In this case, this is a screenshot from the instance of TUWin, and DAMAP recommends you the institutional repository, but it also has a connection to other registries like referee data, where you can look up a domain-specific or a more appropriate repository within the tool. So these are the examples of how DAMAP does things differently. But as I said, this work at RDA was something that was common for many of us in Europe. And then there are also other tools that are implementing the recommendations. So it's not only DAMAP by now, it's now Argos and Data Stewardship Wizard, DMP Online. And how we implement machine actionability differs. And I think this is the unique selling point of each of the tools. And this is not something I'm going to discuss right now, but I wanted to just show you with my presentation that we zoomed into Austria to solve some specific problem, to turn this research data management theory into practice by implementing a specific tool. And it's still now the results of what we do, we can still contribute to the global perspective, because a subset of these tools, including DAMAP, including Argos Data Stewardship Wizard, decided to go together for a project, for a European project, and this project is called OS Trails. So in OS Trails, which is a Horizon Europe project, we have 39 partners. OpenAir is the lead. We are the technical lead, we meaning TUWin, and the project runs for 3 years. And as you can see, it's a pretty big project. It's funded within the EOSC infrastructure projects. And we're focusing here on 3 main things. One is machine actionable data management plans. Second thing is the integration with scientific knowledge graphs. And the third one is the fair testing. So in this figure, you can see in the middle that first we do the planning. We describe the relationships between all types of digital objects. So not only data, not only publications, but basically everything which is a relevant research output. Then we use knowledge graphs and registries to get information, to improve the documentation, to improve the planning process. And we also use this information for the proper fair testing, because there is no one size, no one test that fits all the types of data. So we have to always take into account the specific practice within a community. And project aims to share some commons, which you can see in the top of the figure. So we want to contribute some standards, recommendations, APIs, whatever that is, for everyone who is also not part of the project to benefit from this interoperability. And in this way, we want to contribute to EOSC so that everyone, for example, who implements the specific API or follows the specific recommendation or a standard can have the equal opportunities of participating in EOSC Federation. But when it comes specific to machine actionable data management plans in OS Trails, we want to focus in the project on 3 things as of now. So one thing is changing the current practice of exporting a document from a tool, because right now the data management planning tools export a PDF or export a machine actionable JSON file or some ontology file. and it would make sense to provide a common API, so a common way to access the information within the tool, so that others can get the data or modify the data of the DMP when needed. So this would make the DMPs more living documents and not documents that you just write at the beginning, export and forget. The second thing we want to target is the alignment with scientific knowledge graphs, because a lot of information that is modeled in the knowledge graphs, like if you look in the OpenAIRE knowledge graph, has an overlap with what we discuss in the DMP. So there are connections to different data sets, there are connections to people, to researchers. We talk about the licenses, we talk about the repositories that hold it, and there is no reason why we should be using completely different language or a different language to talk about the same things. So in the slide, you can see on the left-hand side, a recommendation from the RDA group regarding how to model knowledge graphs. On the right-hand side, you can see the model from the RDA working group on MADMPs. They are, without going to the details, they are similar but not identical. And this is one of the things we want to discuss in the project. Should it really be different? Maybe we can have a better alignment and in that way facilitate the use of information. And the last thing that is relevant from the point of view of machine actionable DMPs, we want to see how we can facilitate the automated DMP assessment and how to take the fairness indicators into making a recommendation or a judgment on how good a specific data management plan is. So if you see in the bottom left, we are thinking of a scenario where actually the evaluation of the DMP happens at the site of the researcher. So it's not so much the task of the reviewer or the funder, but basically the researcher gets the live feedback when writing a DMP. This DMP describes a fair set of actions or is appropriate for your domain and all that kind of stuff. And of course, you can have different goals of the review of a DMP. And we have started already this landscaping activity. You can see some very first drafts on the right-hand side that you can assess DMP having different goals in mind for the completeness of information, for the feasibility, whether what you're describing actually makes sense and can be implemented, or is it just a nice story you're describing? Quality of actions. So this mostly applies to DMPs at the later stages where you kind of check if what somebody did really was performed and if it's really findable and accessible and so on. And also the final one for the compliance, where you look basically how well a DMP complies with a specific regulation. So with the funder template or maybe with some policies. So these are the initial ideas we have for how we can automate DMP evaluation, and we will be definitely seeking some more engagement from the community, very likely for RDA groups. So to sum up my presentation, I want to say that basically I think the transformation in data management planning is happening now because we have all these different components, building blocks like knowledge graphs, like fair assessments and so on. And now is the moment when we're trying to find new pathways of how to put all these things together. We already have this many ingredients.
2 minutes.
But we still have a way to go together. So we need to look for this further standardization and alignment, just like I gave you the example with the SKGs and MADMPs. We have to find out what we can do better regarding DMP assessment and in general indicators of how to help people improve their data management practices. And as I think I will now say at every presentation, we need to drop PDFs. So we want really to make sure that we have live information in systems that we can access anytime we need, that it reflects the situation as it is. And it's not just like write and forget and then save it into the PDF. And that's what we don't want to have, I guess, in the community. That's it from my side. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Thomas. If there are any urgent questions, either for Thomas' presentation or the other two presentations, please use the opportunity now. If not, I would say we start into a 10 minutes break. Let's see. Anybody has raised the hand? I don't see it now. So I would suggest that we go into a 10 minutes break. This means we meet at 11 sharp again. Thank you. So I would like to ask our next speaker, Robert Ulrich, to open the camera.
Oh.
Yes, Robert, you're there. So we start into the second half of our today's event, and we will start with Robert Ulrich. Robert is coordinator of RDM at the Library of Karlsruhe Institute for Technology. He's involved in the Fair Impact project, and he's also co-chair at Re3Data, the Registry of Research Data Repositories. And this will also be his topic now. Robert, the floor is yours.
Yes, so I want to give today some insights onto the fair impact work that is done on the exposure of repository information with regards to trustworthiness and assessment. This talk had been prepared together with Robert Huber, who is on vacation, so I took over his slides. Robert works at the University of Bremen in Germany as a researcher and software developer, and he is engaged within Pangea and responsible for the Fuji assessment tool. So within task 5.4 of Fair Impact, we are working on guidelines for repositories, registries, and similar or related metadata services. And an initial version of the guidelines had been published as milestone 5.2 within Fair Impact. The guidelines will focus on mechanisms to connect repositories, registries, discovery portals with trustworthy measures such as co-trust seal, which are also part of the task group, and fair object assessment as the Fuji tool. But the guidelines will not be limited to specific services, as the aim is to guide to enable seamless discovery in different contexts. So there may be generic use cases, but also subject-specific ones that we want to enable. As for the guidelines, we have three major pillars that the guidelines build up on. The first pillar is transparency and standards. So trustworthiness is difficult to grasp. We focus, therefore, on transparency and the standards. A major part in the concept is to foster transparency on the entity level, meaning that the exposure of the data should be open and, if possible, at the source of its origin. So the entities should be self-describing and obviously following standards and community recommendations. This includes RDA outputs regarding fairness, repositories, metadata, etc. But we especially recommend the use of RDF and DCAT as the minimal common ground. And it's also a standard that is quite mature already. DCAT is also used in different scenarios already, like the European Open Governmental Data in the OGC standard. And we also use or rely on the RDA outputs like those from the Data Repository Attributes Working Group, which provide major characteristics to describe a research data repository in our context. The next pillar is evidence and assessment. So with every information or every data exposed, there should also be evidence be exposed, if possible, so that we can rely on the basic principle in research that with every assumption we also deliver the proof, and this allows the assessment of the exposed information. One example would be if a repository claims to assign DOI, it just gives one example of a data set with an DOI assigned to it, and then an assessment tool can just resolve the DOI back to the repository and take this as a proof that the DOI assignment is working well. The third pillar is the linking and aggregation. So as a core part of the concept, it is not to reinvent the wheel, but and build another platform that connects everything. We want to make use of the existing services that are out in the world already and break up the information silos and link them together. This allows services building up on the linkage and to discover further information as needed and provide further insights depending on the context they are developed in. One example would be a fair assessment tool could query the repository for certification and follow the links to the certification authority to retrieve specific information regarding the long-term preservation or how long the certificate is valid. And so far with the initial guidelines, we came up with 8 basic rules. So relevant information should be exposed to achieve transparency. Information about the functions and characteristics of repositories and objects should be expressed in line with defined standards and criteria. Information should be exposed by and or provided reference to an originating source. Clarity should be provided on how information should be expressed to support humans and machines. When an assertion can be validated, the possible validation actions should be defined. Appropriate standards should be used to expose dataset metadata, fair assessment results, and catalog information towards harvesters and discovery services. The levels of care offered by a repository and received by digital objects should be expressed, and multiple fair assessment tools should be exposed and embedded in a holistic fair consultation process that supports contextual understanding. And along with the guidelines, we also plan to, or we are currently implementing a prototype which tests the guidelines and our assumptions in the real world. Especially we want to collect feedback, ideas, and refine the guidelines together with the community. And we started with services, tools, and partners within the Fair Impact project. There's currently a support action running from Fair Impact with partners, and we also plan to expand the scope to other interested infrastructures and services, maybe you. So stay tuned for maybe a second call within Fair Impact. So now I want to give a few examples how this could look like. Those are the slides from Robert Huber. So please excuse if I'm a little bit brief here. So Robert is developing this Fuji tool, looking a little bit deeper into the repository information that is provided for fair assessment. And as that, if we look here on a pizzeria search within Google, we find quite detailed and context-related information. If we do this on data, then the results are rather generic and unspecific. And Robert also did the analysis on the repository listed in review data. So he took out a subset and queried the APIs and had a look into those different sides of the medal. And he also figured out that within review data or listed repositories, the majority of metadata on research data is rather generic and based on more abstract metadata schemas like Dublin Core and schema.org. And it's missing detailed descriptions and annotations and is not so much on the subject-specific side. So with that, we had a look into what are the current standards used to expose repository information. And with that, you see here a few examples. I think quite common is the Dublin Core description. You also see the DCAT mentioned already. And schema.org is also quite popular to be visible within Google or to improve the SEO there. And within Fair Impact, we have two technologies that we are focusing on. The one I mentioned already, DCAT, where I get a little bit more into detail, and also FairyCAT, which is based on signposting. So the advantage of DCAT is that it is extensible and based on RDF, but it's also a little bit more complex. It's used or adopted in a broader context already. So the EU open governmental data is exposed via DCAT AP. The OGC community, also the geographical community is adopting DCAT for the geo sciences, and there are quite a lot of other communities relying on DCAT already. On the other hand, there is FairyCAT, which makes use of signposting. This is a rather easy to implement technology based on JSON to point to different entities in the research world. And this is quite easy to implement for existing infrastructures and repositories. So this is the basic structure of DCAT, or the architecture, how to describe a repository with its data sets using RDF. So you see the abstract here with the catalog and the data sets. Data sets can belong to a data series, and the data sets also provide how they are distributed and by which data service, and they are all part of a high-level resource object that gives insights. And if you look a little bit deeper into the specifications, you see, for example, that the major entities are much more elaborated within the specs. So you see here the catalog that ranges from language licenses and publishers in up to policies and all the properties that are relevant for catalogs. One advantage of the DCAT standard is that it is aware of the PIDs in the research world, and it allows to connect the RDF and semantic web with the PID and knowledge graphs. So here you see an example of a data set that is connected to an DOI.
Few minutes.
Using the asset description metadata schema, and also connecting to the ORCIDs. And with that, we can bridge the gap to the other infrastructure services that are provided by raw ORCID and DataSite, and make use of those information within the FAIR assessment too. And also, as Robert is working on the Fuji tool, we are happy that DCAT is also aware of connecting datasets with quality measures. And here you see the example how this connects to by making use of the data quality vocabulary. And Robert exposed this already with Fuji. He has implemented a prototype, and here you can see an example how he exposes the Fuji Fair Assessment tool results using RDF and the data quality vocabulary. And he is going to expand this during the duration of the project and moving this into production of Fuji. And with that, I would like to thank for your attention, and that has been the quick insight into the exposure of repository information and how we plan to do this within Fair Impact.
Thank you very much, Robert. Our next two speakers will explore some of the principles you mentioned already further. And I would like to introduce both of them now. So Yann Lefranc holds a PhD in neurosciences and pharmacology, and he's the CEO and scientific director of eScience Data Factory, which is a French R&D company that aims at innovative solutions for data management. He's also involved in the Fair Impact project. The other speaker, Jonas Kesaniemi, works as a software architect for the IT Center for Science in Finland. He is specialized in linked data and semantic web technologies to work in production systems. Currently, he is developing the metadata schema and crosswalk registry for the FAIR Core for EOSC project. So our next topic is about metadata, semantics, and interoperability. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this introduction, and hello everyone. So I'm gonna indeed share this presentation with Jonas. I will present the FAIR impact side, and Jonas is going to present the work they are doing in FAIR Core for EOSC, our sister project. And the presentation is going to be related to metadata, semantics, and interoperability, which is an activity we have at the heart of a FAIR impact project. We have a whole work package dedicated to that, which aim to develop and foster the uptake of semantic framework for governance, creation, mapping, sharing, reuse, fairness assessments, and interoperability of semantic artifacts for EOSC. One of the points being that semantic artifacts, which is a sort of umbrella term that includes ontology, terminologies, taxonomies, code lists, and everything that basically contains some semantic information. Well, the semantic artifact, if you really want to implement the FAIR principles, they have to be fair themselves, as well as the service that are publishing them. So the work package is organized in 5 tasks. We have first task that talks about governance of semantic artifacts, a task that talks about lifecycle and catalogs for publishing semantic artifacts. We do have a task on metadata for research software, and a task on mappings and crosswalk that I'm going to present today. So I'm going to focus because I'm the task lead of that particular task. And we have a dedicated task to collect use cases, making sure that all the things we are developing in the 4 different tasks can be reused by communities and integrated in their use case. So let's focus on mappings and crosswalks. That's the main focus, my main focus for the last 2 years now already. Well, mappings and crosswalk basically allow computers enable to, oops, sorry, didn't notice that this was an animation. So the idea is that as a human, we're using different names for the same thing. And here I'm taking the example of trying to aggregate 2 databases of cat pictures. So in one of the database, the owner is calling that domestic cat, and the other is using the species name. The problem is, for us, it's easy to understand that they are both the same, but you want to work with computers, and computers do not understand, even AI does not understand, that they are actually the same, right? So you need to further specify that for the computer to be able to work with this equivalence in meaning. And the same goes, for instance, to say that a domestic cat or a Felis silvestris catus is also a domestic animal, right? Which is, let's say, a superclass of cats, right? And so basically the idea is that in order to leverage this correspondence between the different concepts, we need to establish these mappings and to make them into a machine readable, at least, but machine actionable would be better format, right? So that the machines can use that to help us retrieve and aggregate heterogeneous data sources. So basically a mapping is just a correspondence between 2 entities. Basically what you're doing with a mapping is to say that a first entity, which can be a concept from an ontology or from a vocabulary, which could be a data element, could be a metadata field in a metadata schema, is linked to another entity that could be also very diverse. Now, the main practice is that these mappings are shared within a table. Usually it's even what we call a correspondence table, where you just have one entity on one side, the corresponding entity on the second side, which assumes that they are equivalent, exactly equivalent. So there's usually no real specification of the relation that links these concepts, which can be an issue when you try to reuse them. Now, the other issue is that you need to document these mappings. Mappings are done for a good reason. They are useful for the person who did them. Now, for someone else that wants to reuse this mapping, it's impossible to know the context. So you need to contextualize the mapping to make sure that you can reuse it appropriately, and that will fit with your own use case. And when you start grouping this mapping together, you end up having what's called a mapping set or crosswalk, which would allow you to go from one metadata schema to another, for instance, or to transform your data from one ontology to the other. So why do we want mappings and crosswalks to be fair? Well, as I was mentioning, they are hard to reuse. You have just a correspondence table. There's no real explanation about the relations that links them. They are actually hard to find. Many of them are published on GitHub. GitHub is not necessarily the best search engine ever. So if you want to retrieve them, you need to know where they are. Some of the organizations that are doing mapping, and thinking, for instance, data sites, they come up with mappings with DCAT, for instance, that are published on the web, but still they are just a correspondence table. So there's no context in many cases and no reason for the mapping or no information whatsoever about who actually did the mapping and made this choice. It's often based on community practice, which might require in some cases for you to reuse to do some additional mappings on top of it. Therefore, well, you definitively need to do fair mappings if you really want to reuse and make it valuable. One of the reasons is doing mapping is certainly a fun exercise, but it's extremely costly in terms of time. It's a lot of effort. And so basically, it's nice if we can share these resources so that it prevents others to have to redo the same effort. Basically, the idea is to make the mapping fair to support the reusability instead of duplication in other domains. That will lead to the reduction of the computing power that is necessary to use these mappings, because at some point, these mappings are going to be used to make transformation or translations. So if you have duplicates and if you have ambiguities, then you need to resolve them. It's also going to be very tricky to automatize the transformation. So mappings in fair impact, the objective of the task is to first establish guidelines on how to make the mappings fair. We want to work toward a machine actionable common exchange model. We don't necessarily want to change the practice. So if you want to still use your table, use your table. But we want to say, if you want to share it, please extend the description and actually use that common model so that it can be published in some common repository that Jonas is going to talk later, and it can be used by the same tools, so you don't have to redesign new tools to use a new format. We also engage strongly with communities to actually co-create, test, and adopt this model for fair mappings. Of course, the recommendations, because they will be open for review, and they should be published very soon, and to identify methodologies and practices around mappings. And then finally, we want also to work on establishing some governance framework for mappings. Mappings are live entities, like vocabularies or ontologies. They change over time. So we need to have some specific rules to manage that. So what we're doing in Fair Impact, we're working on these two aspects of the same coin, basically, the two sides of the same coin. A technical aspect where we look at the modeling, we look at the fair recommendations and so on. The other one is to work with the communities to identify the practices that are used in the different communities to actually establish mappings, and to understand and document this community practice and maybe come up with some generic framework for the practical aspects of mapping process. So how we work with organizing workshops. We do a lot of community engagement. So we already have 3 workshops. There is another one in the pipe for discussing the fair recommendations. We also launched a survey. You can actually contribute to the survey if you're interested. And we are currently putting together a RDA working group on fair mappings, which will continue the work of Fair Impact after the end of Fair Impact. And we'll also bring in more communities to get more insights and feedback. Now, the key part of the work is that we're building the fair recommendations. Right now, we decided instead of going for the 15 individual fair principles to group them with different topics. So there are 4 topics. One is model and format, which deals with interoperability and reusability aspects of FAIR. The metadata, which deals with findability and reusability as well. PID, which is used for findability. And then service and API, the idea is to actually provide some requirements and recommendations for the next presentation, which is going to be given by my colleague Jonas. And now I leave the floor to Jonas.
Thank you, Jan. Yes, I'm Jonas Kesenimi from CSC, and I really have to say that FAIR Core for EOSC is a perfect sister project for the FAIR Impact, because we are a research and innovation action. So we are building the components, tools, services that are used, that can be then used to put these recommendations and models into practice. And I will be FAIR Core for EOSC is a big project that deals with 9 different components, and I will be focusing on the task 4.2, which is the FAIR metadata schema and crosswalk registry, MSCR for short. And as you will notice that it's a bit more than just a registry. And the reason for that is that the requirements for the functionalities of that component come from 5 different case studies. So we have been going through different kinds of mapping and crosswalking cases and uses from the climate change, mathematics, social sciences, this kind of national CRIS services and service providers and research data management communities, basically UDAT services. And what the MSCR does basically comes from the requirements coming from those communities. The project will end in a year, and of course then the component will be ready and released, but we're hoping to open up have an open testing period starting early next year. So that's a heads up for if you are interested in something that I'm going to present soon. So next slide, please. I'm going to just quickly go through the basic features of the MSCR. So it has a very strict constraint on the context in which the crosswalks are going to be used. So what you need to do first is you need to register an existing schema. So basically that means that you can maintain it in a repository, or you maintain it in GitHub or somewhere, and you need to register that. That creates a record in the crosswalk metadata schema and crosswalk registry. You can do the same thing with existing crosswalks. So you can have pieces of code, you can have these tables that Jan mentioned, or you can have XSLT or something like that that works as a crosswalk. You can register that. But as I mentioned, it's more than a registry. So after you have successfully registered these schemas, and by the way, those can be in different formats. They can be CSV, so basically just a list of names of the columns. They can be JSON schemas, XSDs, so XML schemas, OWL ontologies. They can be even vocabularies. That's from MSCR perspective, a kind of a schema too. They can be shackles.
2 minutes.
Then you can start creating a crosswalk. You select the source schema and you select the target schema, and you have a tool for creating crosswalk between them. And the tool, the crosswalk editor, will have a harmonized view of all of those schemas, regardless of the original format. And then finally, we have a requirement that should facilitate the operationalization of those crosswalks. So basically, taking an input file, the crosswalk, and producing an output file. So there we go into the processing part of the crosswalks. And last but not least, it will handle the versioning and also assign resolvable handles to all of the registered schemas, crosswalks, and mappings in those crosswalks. Next slide, please. And this is the same thing in a different way. So basically, there are these 4 different main features: schema registration, crosswalk registration, crosswalk editor, and the transformation engine. And then you register content, which is schemas and crosswalks. And then with the editor, you can also create crosswalks, but you always need to tie that crosswalk either registered or created to source and target schema. And then you can use that crosswalk, use the input data to create output data with the transformation engine. Next slide, please. And just a couple of very simple examples that we are the kind of mappings that we will support. So for example, vocabulary kind of mapping where you have many to one. So you can have custom role codes and you want to map those to a credit taxonomy. Next slide, please. Or you have some JSON. So these are the JSON data instances, but you would have a schema that would say that there is a temporal element which has end date and start date, and they are of type data type date. And then you have another schema that has only temporal coverage where the value is string. And then you can create this kind of mapping. So it requires many to one type of mapping with some processing. So you handle those values of the end date and start date to create another value. So that's it. Very quick introduction to the MSCR. If you're interested, you can go to our website and learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Jonas. You gave a great insight into the technical developments into the FAIR Impact and into FAIR Core for EOS projects. I would now like to close the presentation and the screen sharing and give our audience the opportunity to ask questions. And please raise your hand. I hope I can see everything here. Are there any questions to any of the presenters?
I have a question.
Jonas.
About the machine actionable DMPs. Maybe you mentioned it, but I didn't maybe get it. So is the idea that in addition to figure out how to describe and maintain those machine accessible DMPs, you would also have a tool for example, I think one of the nice features that those allow is that you can check how the plan was basically working out. So do you find those things in the places that you have? Is that kind of a checking tool part of the project, or is it something for the future things?
Yes, we have a dedicated task for DMP evaluation. So of course it's still being discussed what this actually includes. So whether we want to focus more on the initial DMP and let's say assessing and giving feedback on the planned actions, or is it also focusing on the final version of the DMP where it actually describes what we did? But I can imagine that it will be a mixture of both things, depending on the lifestyle. But one of the main building blocks is also to be able to pull the results from all other fair evaluation tools, because again, the project has as one of the goals to seek the alignments of how the fair evaluation tools produce the results and how we can kind of integrate these assessments from this.
Thank you.
Jan.
Yes, so there is a question in the Q&R from Miguel about mappings, and the question is, mapping the only possibility to improve interoperability, meaning if interoperability between metadata schema can be reached by any other means than mappings? And that's a very good question. I think mappings are a key element for achieving interoperability. That's actually made quite clear by the EOSC working group that come up with the EOSC interoperability framework. There are no other way that I know of that will help you working on interoperability between metadata schema. Because the way for them to work is that you need to align at least the semantics of the different fields. And this can only be done by mappings, as far as I know. But that's, I would say that I acknowledge my ignorance on other ways. So if there are other solutions, you know. But I think Jonas has been working on metadata schema transformation, and they're all mappings.
Yeah. There is still discussion going, what is the scope of a mapping and when does it become something else? But of course, the other way of achieving interoperability is to agree on common things, but that has its limits, as has been proven. So mappings will always be needed at some point.
And actually, just to advertise the RD Fair Mapping Working Group, that's something that we are going to work on. What's a mapping?
Yeah.
Because we realize when we discuss with people that mappings has a lot of different meanings depending on the types of at the level of the interoperability you're working on. So some people consider that data transformation requires mappings. Some others say that it's just between ontologies, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that we would like to clarify is what we mean by mappings. We also had some discussions where even semantic annotation would be considered as a mapping because you relate an entity in a schema with a concept in an ontology. So at some point we need to scope that, and we're planning to come up with a sort of categorization or classification / ontology of mappings to clarify the topic of discourse, because there are quite some funny misunderstanding when we're having our meetings with other communities. So the group is open to anyone who wants to contribute. So, and everything will be public, so you can always contribute whenever you're interested in.
That was an open invitation. Thank you. So I do not see any raised hands. Please remember, you can also post questions in the chat, but I would then now hand over again to a person who is involved in the Fair Impact project, Joy Davidson. Joy Davidson, please open your camera. You did.
I've opened the camera, but it's not allowing me to share my screen, unfortunately. So I don't know if I sent you my link to slides. I don't know if somebody else can share the screen for me. That would be great.
Rita, can you please do that?
Joy, give me a second. I'm solving your situation. You
Sorry
should.
about that.
No worries. Should now be able to share your screen.
In the meantime, please, Joy, let me introduce you. So Joy is Associate Director for the UK's Digital Curation Centre. She is involved in the Fair Impact project as work package lead for engagement. And Joy, I think you want to give us some information on the open calls in the Fair Impact project. So
yeah, I do. Thank you very much. And thank you for solving the technical issue so quickly. So yeah, I'm just going to take a very brief few minutes to describe some of the support that we're offering through the Fair Impact project. So for some of you who've maybe joined other events, this may be old news, but maybe for others, this is new information. But we have three main ways that we're providing support through the Fair Impact project. The first is through Route 1 support, and this is where you get a little bit of dedicated one-to-one support with the Fair Impact team, and we help you to develop fair implementation action plans and to progress your fair enabling capacity. The second route is where we give you a little bit of financial support, and the financial support is really just to buy out your time, and it allows you to test specific tools, approaches, and solutions. And the third is the most open form of support, and this is our series of fair implementation workshops, and these are open and free for anybody to join, and they're virtual, so you can join from anywhere that you like. So that's the kind of flavor of the support we give. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to now go into a little bit more detail in what we do in each of the different kinds of support. So first of all, I will go into the Route 1 support. Route 1 support is essentially where we come up with a support program. And for the first running of the support program, it ran over a period of 9 months. We're currently in the last few months of that program. And we are targeting 3 different stakeholder groups. So one support program for repositories and data service providers, one support program for RPOs, and another support program for national level initiatives. We opened that call towards the end of last year, and the support programs have just started in 2024. And we have 50 participants working across the 3 support programs, representing almost 30 organizations and 15 different countries. And I just wanted to let you know that we do have one open call that is just open at the moment for the national level, second running of the national level support program. The deadline for that is July 12th, but there is a webinar this afternoon. So if anybody's interested, there's a link on the slides, or you can go to the Fair Impact website and register. It sets 4:30 this afternoon. When you are in the support program, as I said, they run over a period of months. What we tend to do is a mix of thematic workshops covering key themes like policies and data management plans and training and guidance, and also trying to get a mix of peer exchange. So we really understand the value of ensuring that people can learn from each other and share their experiences as we're all kind of learning and making our way on our journeys. So it's a real mix between us talking to people and some peer exchange, but also a chance to work with mentors and to develop their action plans. The second route that we provide is the financial support that I mentioned, Route 2. And this is based on a financial flat rate that we offer of 500 euros a day. We work out how much time it should take somebody to be able to make use of a particular tool or approach, and then provide some support. That's really just to now allow somebody to justify spending the time testing a different tool or approach. We've had 2 open calls so far. The kinds of things we're giving people the chance to work on are things like fairness assessment tools, including Fuji, and a new version of Fuji, which is looking to assess the fairness of research software, but also things like persistent identifier policies and the Fair Core for ES compliance assessment tools. So those are a kind of flavor of some of the things that people are getting to work with. And also you heard from Robert on some guidelines that Fair Impact has come up with on fair enabling and trustworthy repositories, and that's a support action that is currently underway. So we just closed the second open call in May, and we had about 93 applications for that, and those support actions are just underway at the moment. We will have one final open call, which we'll be launching at the end of September for financial support. So please do keep an eye on the website if that's something of interest. We'll be putting those support action offers together over the next couple of months, and we'll be presenting them to you, and you'll get a sense of what's available at the end of September. One thing that we are trying to do through the Fair Impact Project is to share these experiences. So we can only work with a limited number of people through the open calls, but we're really keen to make sure that those experiences that people have in working with specific tools and in developing action plans can be shared more widely. So as a key condition of taking part in a support action with us, we ask that people co-author a fair implementation story with us. And these are just short documents that really help people to understand somebody's experience in working with a particular tool, sharing some tips, maybe some potholes to avoid, and just to share those experiences a little bit more widely. So we are publishing these on the website. They will be coming out as they're produced. So please do check what we have available and keep an eye out for further stories that will be coming out in the coming months. The last one I just wanted to flag up was this series of fair implementation workshops. Again, these are virtual, free to join, so anybody can take part if you're interested. We do record them, so if you can't make it at the time, or if you're in a time zone that really doesn't allow you to join, the recordings are also available on the event website. So please do register, and you'll always be able to access the recordings. We do have one coming up in about a week's time, and this is an hour-long session, just over an hour, where people can get some practical insights into a particular thematic area. The next one we have coming up is dealing with verification of sensitive data, and it's proving to be quite a popular topic. I think we've got over 100 registrants for that one so far, but please do join that one if you're interested. And check out the link on the website. We will be adding future events to that as they come up. We do have another one coming up in July, which is sharing some experience in using fair signposting, which I think you've heard a little bit about earlier, to try and make training materials more visible. So we have quite a broad range of topics that are being covered with the fair implementation workshops. And also we're happy to hear from you if you've got a suggestion for a workshop that you'd like to make. So I think that is pretty much all I wanted to say about the Fair Impact support. We do have a dedicated help desk, so if you have any questions, come to the website, and if you don't find the information you're looking for, you can get in touch with us with the help desk. So I will stop there and hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Joy. Maybe you can post the link for the webinar that takes place in the afternoon in the
Yeah, I'll do that in the chat, no worries.
Thanks. Well, then I would like, as our last item, hand back the floor to Rita, who will do the wrap-up of today's event and give a future outlook. Rita.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
In fact, the majority of things I was planning to say were already shared by my colleague Joy. I think my presentation is going to be quite quicker. As Joy said, we have 2 open calls. We have one now open at the moment, which is on the national level initiative. So as I mentioned, we have some webinars for people to pose to make questions of what's going on. One is happening, in fact, this afternoon at 4:30. And the other one takes place in 2 days. So we invite you, if you are interested, to join us today. And on this slide, you have the links to know more about these national level initiatives, open call, when you can apply, what are the criteria, and so on and so on. So I'm going to skip this. And then Joy already mentioned this webinar that's going to take place in June. So I'm going to skip this one. But we have another one taking place early July, which is focused on the skills for EOSC minimal valuable skills profiles implementation using fair signing posting. So the webinar will more or less provide an overview of a catalog developed by another project, which is called Skills for EOSC. But also this webinar will provide some insights of how these projects implemented an approach of fair sign posting developed by Fair Impact. So there is also a link for you to register, and we'll be happy to have you with us on this 1 hour webinar on the 2nd of July. Another point, which was already mentioned in my first presentation, we have this fair implementation catalog. We have tools for you to check. If you are aware of any tools, contact us so we can list your tool within the catalog. And this is it. The way for you to do that, you just need to fill in the web form. The link will be on the slide, and we'll be happy to provide visibility to the tool you are in charge of. As you may remember, we organized the Synchronization Force events. The second one took place last year, and we have a recap report, which we invite you to give a look. It has kind of an overview of the main insights that were discussed on fair data practices in open science. And I would like to inform you as well that the 3rd edition, the 3rd and the last one, we already have dates of this event. It is going to take place from the 3rd of September, and the last session will take place on the 7th of November, so 2 months later. We'll have, let's say, a total of 8 online sessions taking place from September till early November. These workshops are only available by invitation only, but if you are interested to join us, please drop us an email and we will follow up with you. Overall, to close, if you want to keep in touch with us and to receive our updates of what we are doing in terms of fair data practices, open science, and so on, you just need to click on that link, provide your email, and you will be part of our list of newsletter receivers. So it's quite easy. And if you want to know more, please do this. And I believe this is my wrap up. So before I give the floor again to Barbara, I would like to thank you for following Fair Impact work, for attending this Austrian National Roadshow edition, and keep in touch for the next months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rita. So I would then like to close the event. Just a question to everybody. Did you receive the links which Joy posted? Because we have 2 channels here, and I'm not sure if you got them. Okay, so that's fine. Seems to be fine. So I would take the opportunity to thank all the presenters. Thanks to Theo Graz for coordinating this event together with Fair Impact. And thanks to the audience for participating. As mentioned at the beginning, the slides and the full recording will be available at the Fair Impact website. Is that true, Rita? Is it the Fair Impact website or the
Yes, sure.
website?
Yeah, the presentation will be available in the next 10 minutes and the recording in the afternoon, and both materials will be on the Fair National Roadshow Austria event page.
Good, that's really fast. So thank you, and I wish you all a good day. Goodbye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.